A couple updates. I know I said after the game, but Caden will have surgery tomorrow. Wish him full speed recovery. Should be able to do that. Everything looks good. They're just going to go in and repair the shoulder and probably be limited in spring ball, but should be fully cleared by next season. And then, unfortunately, Kanena Odlaga as well had a season-ending injury with his ankle. Probably have surgery on Wednesday of this week, if not early next week. So he'll be out for the season as well. So a number of guys followed that path, but it's part of the game. And other than that, we got out of it relatively healthy. Had a couple guys get banged up, but nobody should miss anything this week. The guys that were a little questionable going into last week, Pat Bryan handled it no problem. Keith played well. Reggie obviously played it well. So the guys that were a little bit banged up came through in a big way. Unfortunately came up short in the Iowa game. 7 games that have been decided by a touchdown or less, and we're 5-2 coming out of them. But I'm sure I'm like everybody else. You think a lot more about those 2 losses than the 5 wins were the ones that sit in your head. Obviously, a very good Iowa team. Like I said after the game, gave them a tough game. Just weren't able to close out, and they were. So to win a game like that, you got to play flawless for 4 quarters, and we weren't able to do that. So this week, Northwestern, obviously a trophy game, a rivalry game. When I came here, they'd won 6 in a row. So the first thing we talked about was respecting Northwestern and what they've done, and obviously a transition in the coaching staff, but more of the same from them. There's a very tough physical team. Got playmakers on both sides of the ball. Guys that are very, I think, in tune with what they're doing right now. You see that I think they, similar to us, they've won 3 of their last 5. Obviously, the last 2 with Wisconsin and Purdue, they're playing their best here at the end of the season. Also, this weekend we'll honor 24 seniors, guys that are going to go through the ceremony. But there are some guys that are going through this year's ceremony that were in last year's ceremony. So it's kind of the wave of today that we're in. I went back to our bye week, had conversations with some guys that could potentially be in that window to move on to the NFL or end up their playing career a little bit shorter than what they're allotted. So a lot of those conversations have already taken place, but a lot more will come next Sunday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. We can't go out on the road until next Thursday, so we'll have it's actually a nice little window of time where you can get a lot of good conversations in, but we're going to put everything into what we can this week. It's obviously Thanksgiving break for our fall break for our kids, so there's no classes this week, so it does allow us to play with the schedule a little bit. They have today off. We have to abide by that rule, but there's no 20-hour rule this week, so we can get a little bit of extra prep time, and obviously they've got 11 games on us, and we got 11 games on them, so a lot of film to get through. So with that, I'll open up for questions.
Coach, how well do you know David Braun?
No.
Is there something about his approach you think that has allowed him to take a tough situation and turn it into something positive?
Well, I met him briefly at Media Day, but obviously when he got hired, we began to do our research and what he'd brought and what he'd done. A very successful coach, and then obviously administration saw him to put him in what I would imagine was a very difficult moment. I thought I was walked out of that media day. I had limited contact with him, but I watched some media over the next 24 hours and just the way he handled and said things. And then this year, as they progressed, I've kept an eye on it from afar. Just been very impressed with his ability to engage and say. And obviously this week it's brought that much more awareness. I usually watch press conferences, post-game, pre-game during the week, the last couple of weeks of an opponent that we're playing. So I've been able to watch him quite a bit, and obviously his players, and there's a message that's definitely come through. They believe in improving every day, and that's exactly what they've done.
What would be the significance of making a bowl game for a second straight year for your program?
Well, it's a great point. Obviously, and I think when we came here, we talked about being in postseason play every year, and obviously last year being able to achieve it. I wish this year we were at a number where that already happened, but obviously it hasn't. So it's a part of this week, but I think setting the message last night with our guys to play in a rivalry game, to know what we've done the last 2 years and the streak that they had before that. Every game is what it is. I think this, to have a trophy game is kind of a cool thing. I think that's what's really appealing to the Big Ten. So there's a lot of storylines and sublines, but that's obviously a big one as well.
You mentioned Caden, sorry to look too far ahead.
Yeah.
You may not be fully cleared by spring. Of your running backs who have dealt with season injuries, do you expect any of them back for the spring? It just seems like more.
Yeah. So actually, Aiden Lawfrey is not out of the realm of possibility this week, to be quite honest. He's going to come back a lot quicker than we thought. So Aiden will definitely be back. Obviously, Reggie, he's got some decisions to make, but Reggie would potentially be with us. Jordan Anderson, because he was injured so early, that was in literally, I think, the first fall camp scrimmage, if I'm not mistaken. So he'll be right on the cusp of it. I don't know if he'll be totally cleared by spring ball, but I'm very excited, and he looks great. He's been bopping around the hallways, and he's been able to work out pretty routinely now, so he's actually leaned up a little bit. Kind of excited to see where he's at. And then Caden, again, it'll be right up there, nip and tuck. But other than that, I'm concerned, but I've never had 4 season-ending injuries in a running back room. It's pretty amazing, but it is what it is.
It's next week when you have these discussions with the players,
Yeah.
but you have some guys that were 6 years, with the age of NIL. How are those conversations different now?
It's incredibly. Again, it's an unintended consequences, but I know it's a joke, right? Like probably made famous by Rodney Dangerfield, right? Like going to old school guys, but like to go to college for 6 years, right, is a long time. So you got eligibility things that got to stay in track, right? We got guys that are transferring in, so they either come in as grad transfers or regular transfers. So guys that are grad transferring in, they got grad classes, which is a whole other set of issues. You got guys that potentially could jump into the NFL, but you also have guys that maybe they're sitting in a position battle where they maybe want to test the waters. They like where they're at, To this day, I don't think I've ever had a player leave this program that didn't end in a hug in my office that I'm aware of. And I think that's probably why we've done so good in that non-transfer world. I think we were one of the best in the country a year ago. We do a really good job of developing our players. Josh and his administration takes incredibly good care of our guys, but sometimes kids just want to see what else is out there, and that's the challenging part more than anything.
What about guys that could come back and not enter the NFL too? Like that's,
Right.
What's that conversation like?
Yeah, Tip Ryman, Isaiah Williams. I think Johnny and Keith would be fair to say that probably I had to talk them out of it last year. So really, I try to say this, and I say talk them out of it, but one of the things that's worked well for us is just presenting the facts, right, and letting them come to decisions. I think that's a really unique part of the world we're in, the NIL world, right, and what these guys can potentially gather and make, as opposed to jumping into a late round early or a free agent. One thing I always preach to our guys is listen, like just because you're drafted or you get a free, you don't make the team, right? You gotta. There are more practice squad players than ever before, but those guys literally transition, very well. Like I just kind of go back to my first year, a guy like Owen Carney, right? Like who played incredibly good for us that senior year and probably played as good a football he has. He's just been kind of bouncing around in and off practice squads and rosters and XFL stuff. And I think when you get to that point where you jump, you need to be as best prepared physically and mentally to make that commitment and jump as possible. Tony Adams was a highly sought after free agent. Now he's a starter, and I know he broke his hand last night, but like we've had probably a higher batting percentage of guys that have gone as free agents and made it in the league at any time in my career. Like Jake Hansen, Tony Adams, I know him as Palcho, Tommy DeVito. I hit Tommy up when our whole story began to unfold, and I got some great, colorful text messages from his father. And I didn't see anything. I get so wrapped up in my day, and then somebody had told me going into the team meeting last night that Tommy had won and thrown three touchdowns. So I shot him and his dad a message, and his dad said, "Coach, I'm literally floating back to New Jersey from Washington. I'm on cloud 9." So it's fun to see those kids have that success.
You said you guys would go with John this week. I'm just curious, when you elected to go with him for the Iowa game, was it thought for the final 2, or did you come to the decision after or during the Iowa game?
I'm going to say I think you guys know this, like I josh with the employees like a little bit here and there when I need to, but it's really a game-by-game approach. I just think that when I brought in John and Luke, one of the things that, people lose sight of is, obviously there's a lot of concentration on the starter, but then you got a guy that's a backup that used to be a starter, and there's a lot of emotions that go into that, right? And I saw Luke's mom and dad in the hotel on Friday, and I just walked up to him and said he'd just been very impressed with how he handled everything all week, and I think they and him both appreciate how he handled it. I thought his practice last week was awesome, and to be honest, going into that post-game locker room, we did a lot of really good things on Saturday, but didn't do enough good things to win. But John played against a very good defense, probably one of the best ones we played this year, and was able to do some things effectively. But there's some things that weren't good, right, that we got to correct on.
You mentioned after the Indiana game that you didn't anticipate playing Reggie Love as many snaps as you did, but it's 2 games in a row now.
Yeah.
After he had missed so much time with an ankle injury, what have you seen from him as he's kind of had to shoulder that load?
Yeah, Reggie's been super impressive since I've got here. Just he kind of is a guy that always ready to do his job. Like one of our big things is do your job, right? And Reggie's always just prepared. He's literally. I remember when we went to Maryland. We were getting down with the 70-man travel roster, and there was a chance he could play, not play. And then once it looked like he wasn't going to play, several of my support staff said, "Coach, I don't know if you're aware of this, but like literally every kid comes up and hits Reggie before the game, right? The couple games that he missed, and have an engagement with him before the game, right? So they witness how much Reggie means to those guys and the teammates, right? And I was going to take him if we had a spot, and he said, "Coach, I'd rather just stay here and rehab," to be quite honest. And I thought that was a big moment because the next week he was ready, right? And Reggie's just got an awareness. He's got a super energy feel to him that I think our kids feed off. He's very, very positive. He's a very unique player. I think he's not real flashy, but he always gets the job done.
Brett, certain games have gone your way this season, but do you feel like the margin of error is a little bit slimmer this year for you guys?
Yeah, I think so. We're a 5-6 team that is trying to get to 6-6, and you get on rolls, right? Like it sounds silly, right? But it's easier to actually keep winning in certain regards once you're there, right? To reverse the trend and be more consistent, it takes guys realizing how every play matters, right? And so there's a bunch of offensive, defensive, special teams plays from Saturday, but I took 2 offensive first half plays, 2 defensive first half plays, and 1 special teams play that I'm not saying they were the game, but they were a big part of it. They were in inconspicuous moments, right? A 1st and 10, a 2nd and 10, a drop ball here, a drop ball there. We always talk about CTO, TTY, catch the ones they throw you. We had 2 in our hands, right? And, Iowa game is a very unique experience every time. But if you look at the box, right, so it was a game that had no fumbles, no turnover, no interceptions. Both teams had 6 penalties, and both teams had 18 first downs. There's very few times where you look at a game that's that balanced, right? There was 1 fumble. I've never seen this in my career that I'm aware of in 15 years as head coach, where Gabe had a strip sack, and it was a first down, right? Because the ball rolled perfectly just out of the reach of a couple of our guys' hands. They recovered it for a first down. So, you have those turning moments, right? And there was they always tell you shouldn't have to challenge plays, but I think I'm 4 for 4 now on challenges this year, and I probably should have challenged 1. I was screaming to get anybody. They would not play a replay on the Isaiah play down the boundary over there that I think was a first down. Isaiah didn't know if his foot was in bounds or not, and then I saw that official. He marked a cleat mark that I know was from a defensive player, and that's what I was going to go off of. But it was in the 3rd quarter. We hadn't gone to the 4th, and I try to always save my challenges for the second quarter and 4th quarter, just because and I needed it, right? That was they ruled that one a completion that would have taken it from 3rd and 19 to a 2nd and 9, right? And you just wish they were on it a little bit better. I actually called timeout and let them review it because I thought if they could pick it up, they would. And in hindsight, I don't know if they would have changed it, but it was very, very close. And then obviously glad they overturned the other one.
Newton, if I'm not mistaken, he did not leave the field on defense
No.
on Saturday. Can you, having played the position, having coached the position, talk about how not normal that is, and just how Aaron said that you've done stats on how he's as good or better on play 50 than he is on play 1.
Yeah, he has a demeanor. The other guy coached like that was, and they're totally different players. But J.J. Watt was a much more effective second half player than a first half player, and I think it's because of their intelligence. They understand what a guy is doing, pass sets. Johnny's football IQ is through the roof. Him and Keith both. I mean, they're very talented. 2 of the best D linemen I've ever had concurrently at the same time. And the thing that really separates me for both of them is they're just super high football IQ intelligence. They really understand the game. They see things before they happen. Johnny plays with great intensity. I was screaming for him to get, because he was going to go after 78, right? He saw what he did to Seth, and he was going to go after that guy. He loses his mind a little bit here and there. But it hasn't been awarded yet, I don't believe, right? But Johnny blocked another kick. So it'll be 5-4. That's the most any player in college football has had in the last 4 years, 5 years. Just his impact in the game. That first one was a blocked. It went a little bit left. It actually went off his hand, and then Alec got the other one. So I believe we've got 4 more block kicks than anybody in college football this year. So there's some positives going out there, but obviously we need to get this one on Saturday, and that's it.
We don't know for
Senior
sure
day
if
approaching. When you got here, you talked about 6th year and the availability to extend people's careers into that 6th year. So I think you got 4 6 years: Ezekiel Holmes, Caleb Griffin, Julian Pearl, and Jordan Slaughter. Can you talk about what those guys mean to be sticking around for 6 years of college?
Yeah, I've only been blessed to be with them the 3. So one of the things that I've always said during this whole process is, for the young men that were here before I got here, like I always try to meet their parents, or I try to be around when they're around, and those guys' journey has been very unique, right? They had a coaching change, but also just a completely different style on both sides of the ball, offense, defense, and they've handled it. They embraced it. I hear those guys say things about what we've done for them, so that's cool. But senior day is always a tough day. So sorry. Why'd you do that, Rob?
if this is going to be the last home game for Isaiah Williams, but if it is, what was his impact on the program, kind of
Yeah,
on and off the field?
Well, I think that the great thing about Isaiah is, as a head coach, I've really learned from him. Just the whole transition of his position, like you felt that was coming. He's one of the few guys that I've been around that transcends both locker rooms, offense, defense. He's obviously involved in special teams. When I got here, obviously him and Corey had a strong past, right? So Corey kind of let me in on his, background, his history, and what he'd been through. Really, last December, I had a chance to sit down with his mom one-on-one and hear a little bit more. And then I know his dad was here for Dad's Day. I think that was the first game he'd been back for. So there's a whole sets of journeys that Isaiah has been through that have nothing to do with the football field that I think is going to propel him to something special in life. I think he's going to have a really good opportunity to play at the next level, whether it be this year or next, but like he's got some things inside of him that you can't really put a price tag on, just the way he lives his life.
Aaron talked about learning on the job his first year as defensive coordinator. How have you seen him handle this? How have you tried to help him in his first year of doing something completely different?
Yeah, it's a different role. I think one of the things I've really hired a lot of in-house coordinators in my career. In theory, Paul Christ was with in-house because he was already there, and I grew up with him. I was the D coordinator, he was the O coordinator, so that was my first touch of it. And then I hired Mike Hankwitz, who had been a long-time guy, and then I replaced him with Dave Dorn, and I replaced him with Chris Ash. So I've done this quite a bit, and one of the things I've enjoyed is usually a coordinator is in the making. If you see somebody, and I identified who that was with Aaron, I know a lot of people thought it was go a different direction, but I knew what I was going to do. And this year's probably been one. We were in my office till almost 1 o'clock last night. And I know his wife with 2 new baby girls probably doesn't appreciate that, but I had pulled out 38 plays from the game that I really wanted to talk through with him. And on game day, I'll make certain suggestions, but usually I'm either going ahead or on a special teams conference with Dish on 3rd down. So I'll have an input, but I'll usually get on and say, well, what are we doing, right? So there's a lot of retroactive learning in these games, but also Friday nights are big nights, how we play the game. Aaron is extremely intelligent. Like as a play caller, there are very few times where he'll say they're going to do this and it doesn't happen. Like he literally. But now we got to get better at making sure we know how to defend. He knows what he's going to see and get our players to do it. We've been, a team that all year long because of injuries, kind of hodgepodge guys together, and it's been tough for him in that regard, but I thought he's handled it very well, and I think it's a great indicator of what we can be. I really like that room. Our outside players, I've been bragging on Charlie for a long time, but our outside edge players played really good on Saturday, and I think that's more of a sign to come. Zeke, Seth, Alec, and a couple of these young guys. That whole room could be back. And Seth, I think, leads the Big Ten in sacks now, if I'm not mistaken. So a really impressive group that I think is going to get better and better. And then Dylan Rosiak, I would say since game 3 or 4, has probably been one of the most impressive linebackers I've been around at that age. I think he could be a very special player in this program. Thank you.